Hi, I'm Kevin Ebi, a nature photographer and author of the book Year of the Eagle. Several years ago, I had a chance to observe and document the activity in a bald eagle nest. I got to watch the young from the time that they were just barely tall enough to look over the edge of the nest to the time that they made their first flights, and then ultimately leave the nest to start the rest of their lives. It was an incredible story, but I realized it doesn't end there. I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's one of the few places where bald eagles can be found year-round. So I continued to follow the eagles around, observing them throughout the year. I put the work together in a project that shows a year in the life of a bald eagle, and that's the story I want to share with you here. Let's start when the parents pair up for nesting season. Bald eagles do mate for life, and they seal their partnership in an interesting and very dangerous way. They fly high in the sky, lock their talons, and tumble back down to earth, breaking away at the last possible minute. It's a dramatic way to commit to each other, but it is as dangerous as it sounds. In Georgia, a pair crashed into a green at a golf course before they could separate. Now, they ended up being okay, but it took them an hour to catch their breath before they could fly off. The timing of this varies a bit based on where you are. Bald eagles have this reputation as fierce predators, but they really don't want to work very hard to catch their food, and they time their nesting seasons accordingly to where the food is. In Florida and the Carolinas, bald eagles there lay their eggs in October and November. In New England and the Great Lakes, nesting season typically begins in January or February. Pacific Northwest eagles typically start in March, and the season begins in April in Alaska. Their first step is to work on the nest. Bald eagles use the same nest year after year, and like some people with their homes, they add on to it each year. Given that a nest may be used for 20 years or more, you can just imagine how big these nests get. In fact, bald eagles hold the world record for building the biggest nests. There was one in Florida that was 9 feet deep, and it weighed 3 tons. That's the weight of 2 cars. A more typical nest still weighs more than 1 car. Now, this image here gives you a sense of scale. An adult bald eagle, it's about 2.5 feet tall, so you can kind of use it as a measuring stick to see how big this nest really is. That weight, though, can collapse fragile trees. If that happens early in the season, eagles can quickly build a replacement. Bald eagles primarily eat fish. Ideally, between 60 and 90% of their diet is fish, so you'll often find their nests within a few hundred feet of water. In the nest, you'll find between 1 and 3 eggs. 2 or 3 actually is the most common, and each egg is the size of a tennis ball. It takes 35 days for them to hatch. Both parents are active parents. The mother sets on the eggs for all but about an hour a day. She'll call out to her mate when she's ready for a break. He, meantime, hunts and offers any necessary protection. Now, it's not like the bald eagle nest faces many threats, but it can face a big annoyance. Crows. Early in the nesting season, about every hour and a half or so, one crow would decide to dive at the male when he was on his hunting perch. The crow would then loudly call as it was doing this, prompting even more crows to join the action. Now, crows are also nesting nearby, so this is probably more about keeping their nests safe from the bald eagle. Now, while bald eagles are stronger, crows are more nimble. So watch one of these mobbing sessions and take a look at just how much those crows get away with. Most of the time, the crows drive the eagle off to hunt elsewhere, but once I saw him come back with a dead crow. Now, unlike most of the other meals which he would deliver to the nest, he enjoyed this one by himself. Other crows watched silently. I'm not sure if that qualifies as a crow funeral, but this ending was certainly different. Back on the nest, it's time for the eagles to hatch. Now, this isn't my image. It's from the Alaska Fish and Wildlife Department. It's from a nest that they were studying. Normally, one of the parents would always be with them at this stage. Here is one of my first glimpses of them. It took about 2 weeks for the young chicks to be tall enough to look over the edge of the nest. They're still very, very cute. As you can see, a parent is always with them. That's partly for protection, but also to keep them comfortable. The young eagles are not able to regulate their body temperature. The mother has to keep them warm at night, but during the day, she acts like an umbrella, providing shade from the intense midday sun. The eagles do grow fast. Even at 2 weeks, they already weigh a pound or two, and they grow even more dramatically after that. By 4 weeks, you can see the first sign of feathers, and the young birds are gaining another pound of weight every 4 or 5 days. With the young beginning to stretch out their wings, the gigantic nest no longer seems world record worthy. A month after the eagles hatch, the parents are away from the nest at least half the time, and by 6 weeks, the young are nearly as big as the adults. Color is really the only way to tell them apart quickly. For the eaglets to grow that fast, they need a lot of food. They get to a point where they can eat about 4 pounds of food in a single meal. That's twice as much as an adult eats. The male works hard to provide it. He works from a perch near the nest tree where he can spot a fish from a mile away and get to it in under a minute. As the young eagles get bigger and bigger, both parents will start taking turns to hunt and keep the birds well fed. In the Pacific Northwest, nearly all of that food is fish, but the parents will get more creative if they cannot find enough. They are skilled hunters, and they can carry about half their body weight, so they can go after prey that's about 4 pounds or so. This mallard is lighter than that, but he still put on a good struggle. When the young eagles aren't eating, they may be getting ready for their first flight, and it's a long process with many steps, not all that different from how we learn how to do things. Even before they have feathers, they spend a lot of their time stretching their wings, learning how to control them. A curiosity phase comes next. They'll sit at the edge of the nest and study everything around them. They look at how high the nest is, they watch their parents fly in, they'll even watch other birds fly by. Even airplanes are interesting to them. Cargo jets would occasionally bank over the lake on their approach to the airport. Every time the young eagles would study those planes intently. Next, the eaglets will test and exercise their wings in an activity called flapping. It's exactly like it sounds. They find some room in the nest, spread their wings, and flap as hard as they can. They may only be able to do it for a few seconds the first time they try, and they may need an hour after that to catch their breath before they can do it again. But those sessions become more and more frequent and even give them a bit of a sensation of lift. In addition to giving the young birds some exercise, this activity also helps them shed some of their baby feathers. You can often tell that this process has begun by walking around the base of the tree. You'll see lots of these little feathers. It can even look like a light winter snow. There are so many of them. The next step is to make a very short hop, either from one side of the nest to the other or to a nearby branch. This is an extremely dangerous time for the young eagles, as there is just no room for error. In the first year of my nest observations, one of the eaglets fell from the nest to a branch about 50 feet below, and there was just nothing its parents could do for it. With all the fattening up that these birds do, they weigh at least as much as their parents, sometimes more, so their parents cannot lift them back up to safety. In this case, the bird worked its way back up to the nest, branch by branch, in a process that took all night, but most in that situation are not as lucky. Now I would like to show you the first flight of a bald eagle. Now we'll start with a still image because I think that it's able to capture so well some of the key attributes. First, notice that its mouth is open. It's screaming the entire time it's in the air. As soon as it's up, it wants to be back down. Its talons are balled up. You can see how tense it is. And those feathers are pointed every which way. It's not sleek like an adult. Now let's watch a video from a different first flight. Here, just notice how short that flight is. One of the most fascinating stories to come out of my time at the nest was from that first year when one eaglet was very interested in flying and the other was not. The more adventurous eagle was able to fly perhaps 100 feet at a time, but it seemed to bother that its sibling just wouldn't budge from the nest. One morning, I watched it fly to the next closest tree from the nest. It hollered and hollered at its sibling until finally it flew to join it. They touched wings, and the more adventurous bird flew just to the next tree and repeated the process. It looked like a game of tag. And the coaching season didn't end there. A week later, the stronger juvenile flew to a tree, grabbed onto a branch, and furiously flapped its wings. I thought it was trying to use the tree as a treadmill or something, that it was a stationary exercise to strengthen its wings. Actually, it broke a stick off the tree, then flew high over the park and called for its sibling to join it. When they were close, it would drop the stick. I think it was hoping its sibling would catch it. I never saw a successful pass, but the flight experience helped the more reluctant eagle develop its skills. I would have expected the young birds to be in competition with each other. After all, survival of the fittest, but they did seem concerned for each other. Once the young eagles leave the nest for the season, they'll never be welcome back. Next year, the parents will have different eaglets to raise. Those birds will need their full attention. In the Pacific Northwest, the eagles depart in mid to late August, which is about the time that spawning salmon are returning to the rivers. This is another one of those cases of looking for easy feeding opportunities. Trying to swim upstream, the salmon are slow and tired, and after their long journey can be quite battered. Fishing now is so much easier than it was even a month or two earlier. The family is still together at this point, but they may break apart in a couple of weeks when the fishing gets even easier. Salmon die after they spawn, and their bodies provide the eagles with very easy meals that don't require much of anything in the way of effort. This is what attracts so many bald eagles to the rivers in northern Washington and British Columbia. Resident bald eagles are now joined by others traveling from Yellowstone and even Alaska that want to take part in the easy pickings. Rivers like the Skagit, Nooksack, and Squamish are relatively shallow. They have gravel bottoms and lots of sharp zigzags. This traps salmon carcasses, so the eagles don't even have to chase the carcasses very far to feed. In the winter, bald eagles gather in large communities, and that is unlike during the summer when they won't even tolerate another eagle within a mile of their nest. They even roost together at night, and their fights over food are largely civilized. Eagles play out fights in their heads so they don't have to waste the energy in real life. They size up their opponents by considering how experienced they are and how hungry they are. Those factors tell them how much of a fight their opponent will put up, and they'll get out of the way or call it off if the fight isn't worth it. Any skirmishes are over in seconds, if they even last that long. Once the rivers cease to be productive, the eagles will leave for areas where the food is much easier to get. While each river may attract hundreds and hundreds of eagles at the peak of the season, half of those eagles can leave within a single week if the food supply suddenly dries up. One of the greatest opportunities for young eagles to develop their hunting skills takes place in the late spring in the Hood Canal area of Washington state. Midshipman fish migrate through the canal then, and their migration coincides with some of the most extreme tides of the year. When the tide goes out, the fish can get trapped in the oyster beds, and that makes them very easy to catch. Here, you can see how easy that is. Stand in some shallow water, stick your head in, got one. The juveniles do not get this opportunity all to themselves. Only about half of the adults try to raise young in any given year, so the ones that are not nesting will show up here too. You can tell them apart by the color of their heads. It takes 5 years before a bald eagle's head turns white. Learning to hunt is a process of its own. At first, the young eagles will likely try to steal food from other birds. Here the victims are often great blue herons. While we may think of the eagle as an incredible hunter, in the scientific community, they're known as thieves. The scientific term for their behavior is kleptoparasitism, a combination of klepto like kleptomaniac and parasite. In time, though, the juvenile eagles will catch their own food here, first starting in the most restrictive tide pools and then working their way up to more challenging fish. When I'm able to do this presentation in person, this is the point where I ask the audience to think, if there was ever a skirmish between a bald eagle and a Canada goose, who do you think would win? The goose, right? The eagle may be stronger, but it doesn't want to waste the energy, and that's really a smart choice. But the eagle doesn't always choose wisely. The case in point was illustrated in this picture right here in the San Juan Islands, where a bald eagle tried to steal a rabbit from a young fox. They all ended up airborne. This is another case where the bald eagle was trying to steal food from a weak opponent. Remember, kleptoparasitism? And honestly, who would be a weaker opponent than a fox that's just a few months old? In the process, though, the eagle snagged the scruff on the fox's neck and struggled to separate the fox from the rabbit. While the three initially got 20 feet up into the air, that was totally due to the momentum of the eagle. You can see how quickly they were sinking back down to earth. What you're seeing here has been slowed down dramatically. The actual incident was over in just 6 seconds. Here it's playing out more than 4 times slower. The young fox was quite shaken, but ended up okay. Interestingly, in the following weeks, the eagle tried to steal food from the young foxes again. This time, though, the young foxes were on the lookout, and as soon as they saw the eagle coming, they warned each other. So there you have it, a year in the lives of Pacific Northwest bald eagles. If you would like to learn more about the project, you can check out my website, yearoftheeagle.com. The website features portions of the story, video clips, and links to buy the book. Thanks for joining me for the Year of the Eagle.